Grab your Bibles. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 7. Good morning, everybody. One of the blessings I have experienced in my life is the fact that my grandparents had a family farm that I got to go out and spend a week or two at a time on, and it was a great place for a young man to kind of spread his wings and get to explore and discover and apply his strength to lots of projects that Grandma had to do around the farm and help Grandpa out and things like that. One of the many blessings there on the family farm was that my grandparents had invested in some fruit trees. These fruit trees were wonderful because you could just go up and grab off an apple, or you could grab off a couple cherries and just eat them right off the tree. And there's really nothing like that experience of going out, picking up a cherry, especially off the tree, eating it fresh, spitting out the little seed, the big old seed, and going after another one. Right? It really is something special. Right before we left Colorado, the family and I had headed up to the park that was just north of our home, and we were playing on the playground, letting the kids play and run off some energy, and I noticed there was this very pathetic looking little tree. But as I went up to it and I was walking around it, I noticed it had cherries on it. And I picked a couple cherries off, and it took me right back there to the family farm to enjoy that wonderful fruit. I was able to invite the kids over, especially the girls. The babies weren't quite old enough to enjoy such things at the time, but the girls were old enough to enjoy the fact of experiencing that fresh fruit right off of the tree, and they were like, "Oh, this is really cool." Loveland, where we were at, was actually known for its cherries for a season. It wasn't until there was a bad freeze, I think, that took place. It kind of killed off a bunch of the trees, and their cherry production really kind of dropped out. But as you head up towards Estes Park, there is the Cherry Company, and they have all sorts of good stuff. So it was a wonderful experience, right, to be able to eat that fruit right off the tree, regardless of what it is. Now, I was talking to my girls about this yesterday when we were getting everything prepped, and I was teasing them, obviously this is an apple tree up here and this is a cherry tree. And they said, "No, that's not right." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" They said, "Well, because there's apples on that one and there's cherries on that one. So we know that, that is an apple tree and that is a cherry tree because of the fruit that's on it." I'm like, "That's pretty smart. You think I can teach all the people who are going to be here tomorrow that?" And they're like, "Yeah, probably." So now you're as smart as a kindergartner. Jesus uses this very simple fact, that a cherry tree produces cherries, and an apple tree produces apples. And you can tell the quality of the tree based upon its fruit. As sad looking as that little tree at the park was, obviously it had a hard start to its life. It produced very delicious cherries. And you can tell if a tree needs something by the lack of fruit that it produces or by the quality of the fruit that it produces. And you can tell what it is by what fruit it produces. Jesus uses this very simple and very universal truth to help us to make decisions, to decide what we're going to do with our life. As Jesus ends his Sermon on the Mount, he wants us to take what he has taught with us, to consider how we're going to apply it to our lives. And last week we began, as he ends his sermon in chapter 7, he begins by saying, the way that you apply this, as you seek righteousness, as you seek to do right, as you seek to do the will of God, you might be tempted to impose this view upon those around you. He says, but first you need to look at yourself. Before you go and take the speck of unrighteousness out of your brother's eye, make sure that you deal with the log that's in your own. And it is in dealing with ourselves and in living out these teachings that we will teach others to do this. But that simple truth is not the only thing that to consider as we consider how we will apply and what we will do with our lives in light of what Jesus has said. In Matthew chapter 7, starting here in verse 15, we read, "Beware of false prophets, who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruit. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes? Are figs gathered from thistles? So even a healthy tree bears good fruit, but a diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear good fruit or bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire, and thus you will recognize them by their fruit." As we consider how we're going to apply righteousness to our lives, as maybe we seek righteousness, we begin to listen to those who are around us. We begin to listen to those who are talking about doing right and seeking God. And we might be led astray by somebody who is not teaching correctly. Maybe somebody who not only is not teaching correctly, but is teaching falsely. The difference between a false teacher and somebody who just teaches something that's wrong, that teaches something that's false, is that they're doing it for self-gain. They're after it for their own benefit. They might even teach the truth, but for their own benefit. Or in it about themselves instead of in it about how it will help others. But how do you determine whether you should listen to this teacher or not? How do you determine who's a false teacher or a good teacher? Jesus says it's simple. Look at their lives. Consider what fruit they produce. Do they produce good fruit or bad fruit? Do they produce fruit in keeping with righteousness and what they're preaching and what they're teaching, or are they producing something different? It's really that simple. Now, practically, that might be a little harder to apply. Sometimes the fruit of one's life does not instantly show itself. The church, sadly, in recent years, has found itself dealing, and I'm talking about the church at large, right, as a cultural phenomenon, not just the churches of Christ, has dealt with a number of ministers and church leaders who thought they were producing good fruit, but in the end were not. And that fruit came out, and that causes a lot of damage. So it's not always as easy, it's not always as simple as it is said. But it's a simple test. What fruit are they producing? What fruit are they producing? You follow those who are producing fruit in keeping with what they're teaching, in keeping with the things of God, the way of the kingdom. So be careful who you listen to. Be careful who you follow. And look at their lives. And consider what they're producing. Because that cannot be altered. It can be hidden. It can be suppressed. But it cannot be changed. An apple tree will always produce apples. And a cherry tree will always produce cherries. And no matter how you phrase it, to a 5-year-old, they will always figure that out. Right? That's how we recognize false teachers. By their fruit, by their life, by the things that they produce. Because in the end, it comes out of one's heart. That's over in Luke. Luke chapter 6. Out of the abundance of the heart, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. You can't hide it. It will come out. It will reveal itself. You have to deal with the heart. Jesus continues, though. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Not only do we have a choice in who we're going to listen to, who we're going to follow, but we also have a choice in what we do with that information. Jesus says it's basically the exact same thing as before when we consider, should we follow a teacher or not? It really comes down to the heart. What is in your heart? What are you producing? What is the fruit of your life? That reveals who you are. That reveals who you are. Jesus lays out a scary scenario. On that day, on that final day of judgment, when all is revealed, there will be those who come up to God and say, Lord, did we not do X, Y, Z? Did we not go to church every Sunday? And did we not teach class? And did we not perform these many works? And did we not do all these things and give 10% and all of this stuff? And to their shock, Jesus says, I don't know you. Depart from me. I don't know about you, but that scares me. It is scary to think that after devoting one's life and checking all the boxes, to be told, I don't know you. Depart from me. And it raises the question, how do we know that we're a part of the kingdom of God? How do we know that God knows us and that we are doing right? Ultimately, Jesus says, it's by you doing what I teach. It's by following me. And you can know that by looking at the fruit of your own life. What do you produce? How do you act? What is the fruits of righteousness? Is your life producing that? Are you dealing with the disease of your heart? Is that showing in your fruit or not? Jesus continues. Verse 24. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house upon a rock. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it did not fall, because it had been built upon the rock. And everyone who hears do them will be like a foolish man who built his house upon the sand. And when the rains fall and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house, it fell, and great was its fall. How do I know that I am following the way of the kingdom? How do I know that when I come to that day, on the day of judgment, that God will say, come, well done, good and faithful servant? Jesus says it's simple. Follow me. Obey me. Take what I have been teaching you in this sermon. All right, from Matthew chapter 5 all the way till the end of chapter 7. Take what I have been teaching you and do it. It's one thing to say it. It's one thing to agree with it and be like, oh yeah, absolutely. The Beatitudes, great things. It's another thing to do them. Jesus has called us not only to right action, but the right reason behind the action. Not simply to lead prayers, not only to pray to God, but to pray to God, to speak to God, and to hear from God, not to be seen by others. To give to the needy, but not so that others might say, oh, how giving are you, but to give to the needy because you want to help others. The reason matters. As Jesus ends his sermon, he says, follow me. I have been teaching you about the way of the kingdom of God. If you want righteousness, you want to do right, do what I tell you to do. Follow me. Look at the fruit of my life. See that I am true and follow me. And to that end, we have a decision to make. Are we going to follow Jesus or not? Jesus uses an analogy that is well known by his own day and something that we know even today. By Jesus' day, it was well established that if you want to build something that's going to last, you want to build an ancient wonder of the world that will be around for generations, you have to lay a good foundation. Start correctly. Jesus says, if you obey my teaching, if you follow me, if you come with me, I will help you lay a foundation that will last. But if you don't, you'll be the foolish man who just threw down some rocks on the ground and said that's good enough. We need to consider what the foundation of our life is. Jesus, being there in the area of Galilee, a large area of that was sand. And at certain times of the year, the sand would be wet and it would be hard and it would be firm. But if you didn't prepare the ground properly, if you didn't dig down and lay a proper foundation, then when the sand dried out, it would shift and it would move and it would become unstable. So what are you building your life upon? What is the foundation of your life? There's a few different things that I think we see people building their life upon. And I think the first thing that we build our lives upon as people in general is ourself. I trust me. Other people have let me down. Other people have failed me. Other things have failed me, but I will build upon my own self because I can trust me. But the problem with that is you can't build upon yourself. You can't support yourself. In the same way that you can't pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. It's not possible. It's not a solid foundation. Eventually you will fail yourself. You will make a mistake. You will let yourself down. You will be quick to forgive yourself, but you will indeed fail yourself. You might trust in your health and your ability to do things, but age will catch up to you. I saw on Facebook this week that an interview from a long time ago. 104-year-old lady doing an interview, drinking a Dr. Pepper. And she said, there's been 2 doctors who have told me there's too much sugar in this and that I need to stop it. And I've outlived both of them. So I'm going to continue to drink my 3 Dr. Peppers every day. Thank you. Now, I'm not condoning a diet of Dr. Pepper. I don't even like Dr. Pepper. But eventually, your run of good health will end. Something will happen. If the pandemic has taught us nothing else, it's we are fragile people. And those who seem strong and seem to be in good health find themselves in an ICU. And those who seem to be in poor health and have struggled with things get it, and then they just seem to be like the mud on the end of the corner who gets run over by a truck and gets up and just waves. It's like, I don't know how they're able to do that, but they just do it. But health is a fickle thing, is it not? And to think that we somehow can control our own health, that we can build upon our ability to do, is foolish because eventually it will fail. Death comes to us all. We cannot trust it. We might trust in our own power and our own influence and the things that we can do, but as we try to prop up that sandcastle, eventually it will fall too. We might trust in our popularity and how much people like us, but eventually people will see through the facade. We'll let somebody down. We cannot build upon ourselves. And in a similar way, people try to trust in success and influence in others, and it fails. You cannot trust in your job. Eventually you will get fired. Eventually you will become obsolete, and some young 20-something who's just out of college, who knows how to run that particular program, will upend you and will become your boss. And it's not right and it's not fair, but it's life. You cannot trust in your career. You cannot build your life upon that. Even family and friends who mean well, in the end, are not a foundation to build upon. They will fail you. They are only human. They are as bad of a foundation as you yourself are. Hopefully they're there for those moments when you need them, but it will fail you. Wealth, as sure as it seems, will fail you. Elon Musk, richest guy in the world, striving to have success, striving to have people like him, never finding success. Because wealth will not buy you happiness. It won't. Even religion, upon religious practices, is a fickle thing to build your life upon. I'll jump through this hoop and I'll jump through that hoop and I'll go to these services and that will make me happy and that will give me meaning in life. But if the truth is not behind it, if God Himself is not behind it, it too is not a good foundation in life. In the end, the only foundation in life that is solid is God. So we have a choice to make. What will you found your life upon? What direction will you go? Jesus ends His sermon and asks that simple question, what will you now do? I have taught you about the way of the kingdom. I have I've tried to help to change your mindset through the Beatitudes. I've tried to help you apply it through my teaching, to help you see what we need to do, what it means to be a person of the kingdom. I've tried to show you the path to God. Will you follow me? And Jesus says, assuredly, if you will follow me, then you will build your life upon a solid foundation of God, and it will lead to success. And His hearers were left with that question, with that image of a house built upon the sand in haste, with a beautiful sunset, with a crumbling foundation. And the question, what is my foundation in life? Have I built upon solid rock, or have I built upon shifting sand? And the question stands before us today. And quite frankly, it's the question I want us to ponder and wrestle with throughout this year. What will we choose? What will be the foundation of your life? What direction will you go? Upon what will you find happiness? There are so many things in this world that are vying for our attention, that are demanding that we follow. But I can tell you that most of them, if not all of them, will burn up. They are shifting sand that will fail in the end. And the fall of that house will be indeed great. So what is your life built upon? Do you need to make changes this year? In your priorities, in your standards, in who you follow, in how you apply it, Is the fruit in your life something that has to be very meticulously curated so that your Instagram reel of life is presentable and all those bad fruits are never seen? If someone just wandered up to you in your life and followed you around and started to become a part of your life, would they find rotten apples hanging on the tree? Oh, I didn't get to that one, I'm sorry. What is the fruit in your life? Who are you following? What are your priorities? What upon are you building your life? It's a challenging question, and it's not something that's just figured out at the end of a sermon. And that's why we're going to spend a long time coming back to this simple question of what are you following? Who are you following? What are your priorities? Because it's an important question to ask. And it's the one Jesus leaves his audience with. And it's one that I think we need to wrestle with. And in the same way that upon that mount, the crowd eventually began to head home and had a several hour or several day walk ahead of them as they had come to that area around Galilee, it's one of those questions we'll have to wrestle with as we make our way home. And it's going to take longer than the 10-minute drive or the 30-minute drive that you have ahead of you. And that's what we're here for. As the body of Christ, as the elders and I have talked about what this upcoming year is going to be about, what directions we need to go, the things we need to address, the goals we have, this is at the center of it. Of asking that question, what is your life built upon? What are the priorities of your life? Who are you following? Because so many things are demanding your attention. Demanding that it's priority, that it's most important. And we have to make a decision. Will we choose to follow God? Will we choose to follow Jesus? Or will we choose something else? And if we can help you with that, if you're wrestling with that, please come talk to us. That's what we're here for. We can do that anytime. But we invite you right now, at this time, to let you know that we're here for you. To pray with you, to counsel you, to study with you. So come, because we're here as we stand and sing.